I talk like this. Welcome to the Pearlii podcast. Here we are again with Dr. Adrienne Wood from the University of Virginia. We're going to be talking all things smiling, and does smiling make us feel happier? Adrienne, thanks again for joining us.
So happy to be here.
Okay, I can see you smiling as well. Okay, first question. Does smiling make us feel happier?
You will be shocked to know how much ink has been spilled in the psychology literature on this question. It's been a debate for like 25 years, and very recent kind of big studies trying to replicate the original studies suggest that yes, in certain situations, smiling can make you slightly happier. But if you are at a funeral, it's not going to suddenly make you happy if you just smile. Like the effects are going to be small.
I read somewhere on Dr. Google that if you smile, it releases chemicals that make you feel happier, like endorphins.
So it's very possible that that's true, because there is, like, you do get a little bit of a mood boost according to the latest evidence from smiling, and that has to happen in the brain somehow. And so it's probably something to do with the endogenous opioid system, which makes us feel good and gives us reward. And the reason that might happen is if your brain processes that happen together, it's this phrase, things that fire together, wire together. So if two things are happening in your brain over and over, then they become kind of associated and linked by neural connections. So if every time you're happy, you smile, because that's how we communicate happiness for a variety of reasons, both evolutionarily and socially. If every time you're happy, you smile, and then you smile, that connection is still there in your brain. And so pattern can kind of, to some extent, go in the reverse, and the smile can reactivate some of the neural systems involved in happiness.
That's fascinating. Makes sense. Maybe moving into your domain of expertise is mimicking behavior, particularly facial expression. I tried to read a bit of your work beforehand. And why do we smile or laugh when other people are smiling or laughing?
A couple reasons. One is kind of an internal reason. It's benefiting our understanding of the social situation. Another is a social reason. So I'll start with the intrapersonal reason. Facial expressions are very complicated. They are fleeting, they're fast, they're nuanced. The difference between a slight eyebrow raise and a slight eyebrow furrow is like all of the nuance it's all the meaning in the world, but it's so subtle. So it's this perceptual challenge that humans have to deal with. We have to look at faces that are all different, and we have to quickly figure out what that face is communicating with these dynamic muscle movements. So what we think our brains do in order to deal with this really challenging perceptual task is recycle the parts of the brain that are involved in producing those facial expressions in order to understand the facial expressions in others. So rather than just relying on my visual system, when I see your slightly puzzled facial expression, I can recreate in my own brain using my motor cortices and my and my somatosensory cortices. I can recreate the experience of what it would be like to make that puzzled face myself. And then that helps me to access information about what feelings are probably underlying your facial expression. So it's this way that we can quickly hack or take advantage of the fact that we are experts in producing facial expressions and use that in recognizing the expressions of others. So that's kind of like the intrapersonal reason why we might mimic another person's facial expression, is it gives us access and insight into what they're feeling. Another major reason we would mimic someone is to form a social connection with that person. So we know from just a vast literature now that if people are behaving in similar ways, so if they're synchronized, if they're doing the same movements, if they're dancing together, if they're tapping their toes together, almost anything together, they will feel a sense of connection, because when you and I are doing the same thing at the same time, it signifies that we are coordinating and we have the same goals and we're paying attention to each other. So if I smile when you smile, it conveys to you that I am responsive and paying attention to you, and we are connected.
Okay, amazing. And if you're feeling happy and I was feeling sad, and I looked at you and I studied your face like that, would I feel happier? Does it have that strong of an effect?
You can measure people's facial movements when they're looking at images or videos of other people's facial expressions. And so you could measure it like visually by just looking at their faces. But in the lab, we can also use electromyography to measure the electrical signals from the muscles. And you can see that almost within a couple hundred milliseconds of a person being shown a facial expression, their muscles will do little muscle twitches that are imitating that face. So even if it's not overtly visible, when I see a smile, my smile muscles activate slightly. Also, emotions are just contagious in themselves. So being around a happy person will make you happier typically. And the closer you are to the person, so if you and I are best friends, that emotion contagion will be even stronger than if we were strangers.
Okay, last question. It's a silly question. Why do we yawn when others yawn? That's not an emotion.
I wish I knew the answer to this. I came up with this really elaborate explanation and I just like haven't figured out how to study it.
Is this because it's too boring? You just start yawning, or
no?
That's a bad joke.
I did yawn a lot when I was writing. I tried to like write a blog post to work out my ideas, and so all of my opinions about yawning, these are opinions. These are not empirically supported. Okay. But all of my opinions about yawning come from actually like my experience as a dog owner, because I feel like we have our very human understanding of what yawns are for. And it's like you yawn when you're bored, but like, what is the communicative purpose of that? Like, why are you doing anything with your face when you're bored? But when dogs yawn, it's often what's known as a calming signal. So it's signaling to others that like they're a little stressed, and it relaxes the dog who's yawning, and then it relaxes signals to the dogs around them that they should also relax. So if you see your dog yawning at the vet, it's not because they're bored, it's because they're stressed out. And so it's these calming signals that kind of simultaneously soothe yourself and soothe others. So I wonder if yawning, we're not yawning just because we're bored, we're yawning because we're kind of like, we're trying to focus on something that's boring and it's really hard. And so we're kind of like easing that stress and then also signaling to the people who are boring us that like they need to stop stressing us out. That might be what
it's pretty good. That sounds logical. I like the dog reference as a very proud dog owner. I think you are as well. Adrienne, thanks so much for speaking to us again. It's always a pleasure having you on the show. For our listeners at home, please follow us on our socials. Download the Pearlii app for more of this wonderful content. Adrienne, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.